It's a very special day. I'll just start with a little well-known fact, which probably, because it's not well-known, probably doesn't even exist. But in my mind, it goes like this. It says in the Gemara, Misha Nichnas Adar, Marbim B'Simcha. If anyone doesn't understand that, please ask me to translate. From the time that Adar starts, which is the month in which Purim falls, we start to increase in our happiness. And there are a number of halachas which follow through with that, but I think it stands on its own. We should try to do things to be happier. We should be happier. Margin b'simcha. It sounds pretty straightforward. Right, Shruly? Mm-hmm. But it says Misha Nichnas Av, which starts tonight, right? Tonight is Av. Mama'atim b'simcha. When the month of Av, or some people call it Menachem Av, tonight will start the new month, the new moon, in the Jewish calendar of Av. We start to minimize our happiness. Mama'atim b'simcha. Someone said, just make note, they never said to be sad. Just minimize your happiness. To be a little bit less happy than you normally are. Like it says on Tisha B'Av, if you sleep with one pillow, normally put a little rock on it. If you sleep with two pillows, take away one pillow. Do mama'atim, but not necessarily to do without completely. So Jew always has to be b'simcha, right? And if you ever doubt it, just look at Lou, and then you can skip to my Lou. So my point is, if you put the two halachas together, which they do appear together, so apparently Chazal do want us to consider them as a couplet, as it were. It's saying the day of Rosh Chodesh Adar start to be happier and happier, marbim, to be happier and happier. But when you get to Rosh Chodesh Av, start to be a little bit less happy. So what does that mean? Since Rosh Chodesh Adar, what should have been happening? Happier and happier. So today, right before we start Rosh Chodesh Adar, should be the happiest time of the year. Although, as I said before, since it's not as well known as it should be, perhaps, maybe people haven't been working on it since Rosh Chodesh Adar to continually increase their happiness. Although I think for people who learn here, it just happens naturally. And then, starting tonight, we have to decrease our simcha somewhat, a little bit less happy till we get to Tisha B'Av, and then whatever, right? Then we have Tu B'Av, which is a holiday as well, a special day to offset that. But theoretically, this should be the happiest day of the year if we followed Chazal's dictum. But let's say you didn't, so at least between now and Shkia tonight, do whatever you have to be Mekayim that Chazal. It's like I once asked the Stipler, Rav Chaim Kanievsky's father, I said, every time I go to America, I feel my Yerushalyim goes down. What can I do to strengthen myself while I'm there? I thought it was a logical question. But it gave me a few Tehillim to say, a special Musar Sefer to say, learn my Sporim, something like that. No. He said, shorten the trip. Which when I told that to my Rebbe at the time, he said, that means there is no answer. It's a thing that happens, unfortunately, but the only thing you can do is shorten the trip. So, unfortunately, I put out the word. It's supposed to go back. My son was 8 months old, my oldest son, meaning our firstborn. And that was the time you feel like showing off the new baby and all of that. So unfortunately, because our families are so spread out, even though I thought I had requested to make the trip shorter, but it ended up being longer. And that really upset me because he said to make it shorter, and here we were going to be taking a longer trip than he had said. So when it came time to leave America, at JFK, there was a tremendous delay, which today we got pretty used to with all security measures, but in those days it wasn't so common. It was obviously something unusual. So they finally came on the loudspeaker and they said, "We are sorry to inform you that we've overbooked our flight." Which someone told me later means we always overbook our flights, but just usually you guys cancel enough for us to fill up a plane. But this time there weren't enough cancellations and it's over full. So without properly admitting their mistake, they kind of said it in a roundabout way, and they said anyone who chooses to stay here will pay you $300 a person and a free stay in the hotel, obviously until we get you out on the next flight. And we were newly married. Our baby was only 8 months old, and struggling Hillel couple, which most of you know, at least one or two of them. We could have used the money, $600 extra bucks. Right? Maybe we'd even get a little bit for the baby thrown in there. And then I remember the stipler. The stipler said we had to shorten the trip, and we weren't able to till now. But now we really want to stay an extra day to chaperine the money, shorten the trip. I was able to be behind the stipler in the last few minutes of the trip to shorten the trip. It was so great. So that's where you are now. We're at JFK, and we're waiting to take off into the 9 days when we'll have to be a little bit sadder and a little bit less happy. But we have a few extra hours now. Chaperine. We can be Makayim, the Chazal's dictum. We can fulfill their words to be happier till Rosh Chodesh Av. So from now until sundown, try to be a bit happier. Okay, that's one of the reasons why this is an auspicious moment, because if not now, when, right? So I hope that my talk helps to increase your simcha and not the opposite, or else I'll be in trouble. Besides, we know for sure, I imagine, that this is a special Shabbos that we finish Sefer Bamidbar. Chazak, chazak, v'nis chazek, we say. What is this phrase, chazak, chazak, v'nis chazek, by the way? Anyone know the shot, why we say that?
We finish, strengthen to be strengthened.
Why chazak, chazak, and why nis chazek?
Because there's something about, you've done something in the past, you do it in the future, you do it in the present, or the future, I can't remember what it was.
So chazak is a statement of strength, just saying strong. Saying strength. Strong, strong, let us be strong.
So why is it 3 times? For the past, for the present, and for the future.
I like what you're saying. My only problem is grammar. Because the first 2 words are a noun. Strong, strong, or whatever you call it, maybe an adverb. Right? Strong, strong. Chazak, chazak. Then, with these chazek, we're saying, and we shall be strong, or really strengthen ourselves. So what are we making a statement of? Strong, strong, let us strengthen ourselves. Any other? Surely you have an idea?
No. I know you tried to make you...
Yes, Lou.
Strong, strong is that I don't know why it's twice, but I can say why it's once.
Okay.
And that is that we are strong now, which is finishing this, so we have a strength that's accruing to us right now, but don't lose it. Don't just let it evaporate away. Take it and carry it forward.
Let's continue. So that's like at a siyum, when you finish one thing, then you start the next. Just go from one strength to another. Very good. Well, you could say the pshat is, we just finished Sefer Bamidbar, so we get a view, like a bird's eye view of the entire Sefer. And maybe we don't think about it enough, but every Sefer of the Chumash is an entity unto itself. Of course, the whole Chumash has 5 parts, right? Lahavdil, like 5 boroughs of New York. It's all one city, but each one has its own personality, right? I don't want to push that too much, but, right? So we should think once in a while, what's the actual character of this Sefer, right? Let's say Bamidbar. So what's the character of Bamidbar? Anyone want to call it a name?
Rules and regulations.
Rules and regulations, okay, but one could say in Vayikra, Leviticus, there's a lot of rules and regulations as well. So, any other theories? What's one of the major things that happens in this Sefer? We leave Har Sinai. Leave Har Sinai.
Preparation.
There was a lot of dissension.
And then there's a lot of dissension. And they go and they follow one the other. Because they left Har Sinai in a certain way, the Gemara says, like children who are running away from school, or like people at the end of a shir in Tsama Nafshi that are like out the door. I didn't say all of them. There are one or two I've noticed. Okay, so then they started going down, right? They had all sorts of times when they complained, when they shouldn't have, and then bad things happen. A Korach appeared, Meraglim appeared. A lot of tsaros happened, and I think more tsaros in Sefer Bamidbar than any other Sefer. So we could actually call it Sefer Tsaros, possibly. But if we're ending up on the right note, then all of that, just like all of our life, we could look back and say, there's been so many horrible things that have happened in my life. I'm sure everybody sitting here could fill up my whole page with things that have gone wrong in their life, or things that they wish would have been different. But hopefully by the time we reach a certain stage of maturity, we look back and we say, but somehow it all fit in. It all led me to a new place where I saw from that new vista a new understanding of Hashem, or a new understanding of myself, or my family, or my friends, or my obligation in this world. So, from that perspective, we can say Chazak.
That comes through in the sign. It's all the journeys that we went through here. We experienced this, we experienced that, we experienced this.
That's right. That's one of the things we go through the whole list of where we went in the midbar, is to sort of take in the whole thing in one view. Correct. So I think that's one thing that we say Chazak, that although it was a bumpy road, and there was a lot of ups and downs, and things didn't quite go the way we would have wanted them to, but still Chazak. Through all of it, we saw the greatness of Hashem, the greatness of the Jewish people, and the greatness of our commitment to Hashem, really. So at the very end, we have to say Chazak, make a statement that we put a stamp of kind of like saying everything is good, everything Hashem does is for the good. And then Chazak also could talk about our relationship, like Lou was saying, right? That we've now achieved a certain amount by going through that whole circle of this Sefer. And then, as you were saying, we should try to go forward and continue it on into the future. Now, another reason why this is a special day is because we're about to start the 9 days, which seems like an extremely sad time of year. We know we sit on the floor in Tisha B'Av, and a lot of things, we're supposed to cry if it's possible. We say Kinos, which is a very sad time. Everything's sad. So right now is the last moment before we sort of descend into that seemingly abysmal pit, and we have to try to take stock of the fact that we're entering a special time of the year, that really, if we, just like we said a moment ago, if we see it in the right perspective, it can bring us to a higher level. That's why after Tisha B'Av, we actually have Tu B'Shvat, which is one of the happiest days of the year, for various reasons that Chazal tell us. That it can bring us through the proper keeping of these days with the proper perspective of why we have to mourn, what are we really missing with the Beis HaMikdash gone, and what that closest to Hashem that we're trying to achieve. That's an incredibly precious moment that we should cherish. So, I'll tell you a personal little glitch that happened this week to me. You wanted to say something? I should drink more coffee. My manager said to drink. It was actually the right moment, thank you. Still hot enough, but not.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So my glitch was that I wrote up, and everyone's had this moment, this techno moment in their lives, I'm sure, that they wrote something up important on the computer, and they pressed the wrong button, and it was gone. And I'm sure everyone's had at least one of those moments, which I wouldn't say you should cherish it, but obviously it's a learning moment. It's a moment for remembering never to do that again. So I lost that Devar Torah. My wife had to go into the archives to print up some other Devar Torah that I must have written a few years ago. And she was all excited because she said it matches up exactly for this year. Erev Shabbos is Rosh HaKodesh, which is the Yortzeit of Aaron. Exactly like this year. It's amazing how somehow what I wrote a few years ago applies this year. So obviously Hashem had seen in advance that I was going to have this need for an archive, a hit from the archive. So, but I decided maybe Hashem just wanted me to take a moment and rethink it. Maybe He didn't want me to publish it as it had been in the order that I was ready to publish it. But I thought maybe I'll try to say it today in a slightly different form. So perhaps Hashem will let me. And if in the next few minutes you just hear blank, you know, we hit the button again. Anyhow, that's just so you get a little happier. Now, we have an interesting parsha, I think. I mean, they're all interesting, don't mistake me. And it starts out with Nadarim, which is a bit complicated. If anyone ever learned Masechta Nadarim, extremely difficult Masechta. And all the psukim go back and forth about the husband and the this and the that. It's a bit complicated. But there's one phrase there that caught my attention because when I learned the Parsha a few days ago, I saw at the end of the Parsha, which is what I was looking for at the beginning of the Shir, it repeats the phrase. So I thought, you know, these kind of echoes in our lives and also in the Torah are supposed to resonate. So I tried to pick up on that. It says in the and also you could ask a different question. This whole thing about Nadarim, what's it doing here right at the end of Bamidbar? Like we just said, it's the end of the story of the time in the Midbar, and there's other issues that need to be how to divide up the land, and you know, I understand there's issues that have to be discussed here. Why Nadarim all of a sudden? It seems a bit out of place. I would have expected it maybe the beginning of Vayikra actually, because then a lot of times people make a neder to bring a korban. Maybe that would have been an appropriate place to speak about Nadarim. So why over here? Why at the end of Sefer Bamidbar? So one of the things is we have afterwards, which is part of the story, that is in the proper place, B'nai Gad and B'nai Reuven. Right? They come and they say, look, we really like the land here on the other side of the Jordan. We have a lot of cattle, and it's really Mina Shemayim, you know, it's beautiful pasture land, and couldn't we just stay here and we'd get out of your hair, as they call it, right? We'll stay here, and you guys go on. We won't take away from anyone's portion in Eretz Yisrael. It seems like a win-win, right? What does Moshe Rabbeinu tell them? You guys are the worst sinners in the world. He really gives it to them. Why? What did they do so bad? Besides being a bit greedy, right?
He only rebuked them for the children that he had.
Nope. That's one little footnote. What did he tell them? You guys are making the same mistake as the Meraglim. All over again. What? They came back from Eretz Yisrael and they said, it's a harsh land. I don't really think we can handle it. Let's stay here in the Midbar a few extra days, years, millennia, right? It's a lot better out here. We get our food to the doorstep, and right? We can learn Torah. Don't have to fight any wars. What did Hashem say? Sinners! I gave you a beautiful land, and now what are you saying? You don't want it. It's like a child saying, I don't want that Lamborghini. I'm not going to get in the driver's seat. Right? You ever see it? No. So that was a problem. We had to pay for that. 40 years in the desert, right? Burn it out of our system. All the people who were there at the time, dead. The children are now ready to go in. hopefully they've learned from their parents' mistakes, right? Most of us feel we're better than our parents, right? So, all of a sudden, B'nai Gad, B'nai Reuven, we want to stay here. Whoa. Rosh says, you guys are really sinners. You're trying to not only to repeat the same Avera as the Meraglim, you're going to make all the other people fall into the same pit. They're going to say, B'nai Gad and B'nai Reuven are staying over here. It must be because they're too afraid to go in. And everyone else is going to get afraid. You know what happens when people get afraid?
They don't go.
Huh?
They don't go.
They don't go. Or even if they go without the proper confidence and bitachon in Hashem. And Hashem said, we're going to do all the miracles for you. Right? You know what happened in Yericho? Sruling?
The wall fell down.
The wall fell down. All they had to do is walk around a few times. You ever try that? Walk around the old city a few times, see if the wall falls down. You ever try it? No. Lou, you ever try it?
I actually did walk around the old city.
7 times?
And not 7 times.
Oh, you have to do it 7 times or it doesn't work, sorry. So, miracles, right? But if you don't have the proper confidence in Hashem, Hashem doesn't do that for sinners, right? For people who are afraid. So, Moshe Rabbeinu gave it to them. And did he give it to them? Right? But what do they say? Oh no, we didn't mean that. Of course we're going to come over and fight with you all. We're going to stay there, not only for the war, we'll even stay there to help settle everyone. 14 years, took 14 years. 7 years to conquer, 7 years to settle. That's all the time they left their kids in the other cities. We don't want to not do our obligation. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, and this we learn a very interesting rule called Tanai B'nai Gad and B'nai Reuven. That the Gemara Kedushin says, perhaps people have experienced this Gemara, it's interesting Gemara, that whenever you make a condition, not whenever, there are exceptions, but the normal rule, when you make a condition, for it to be binding, you have to do it like B'nai Gad and B'nai Reuven. Does anyone know what that means?
Yes.
Yes?
It means you have to say it in the positive and in the negative.
Okay. First of all, Tanai Kodem L'maisa. The condition has to be before the action. If I do this and this, then I get Eretz Yisrael. If I don't do this and this, then I don't get it. Right? So the Tanai has to be Kodem L'maisa. Hain Kodem L'lav. The positive has to be before the negative. If I do this and this, then I get Eretz Yisrael. If I don't do this and this, then I don't get Eretz Yisrael. Okay? And what's the third thing we learn? Rabbi London, he's the third shir.
Can I couple, no?
Couple. It has to be couple. It has to be both. Both the positive and the negative. Very good. Excuse me. It's okay, you woke us up.
So we have to
Going to this home stretch here. Everybody got to get up.
What's happening?
Let's go.
You better be careful, so he's on the rampage.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So it has to be,
Yes.
to this condition, these conditions, they didn't have the blessing of Moshe.
He said,
So
if
is
you
it, so
if you
is
do
it,
this,
is it therefore,
then I give you my blessing.
Ah.
If you do this, you'll give me my blessing. He said, if you really will do all of this,
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to quote, by the way. What does he say? He says, if you do all of this, did I lose it again? Here. Build your things, and then, Hayotze mipichem ta'asu. What came out of your mouths, you shall do. That struck a chord in me, because that's what it says by Nadarim. It says, Lo yachel devar, a person who does not profane his words, Kechol hayotze mipiv, anything that comes out of his mouth, person's mouth, ya'aseh, he should do.
right, so where did he get the inspiration for Moshe to come up with that?
It's not inspiration, it's
Was Hashem?
Hashem, yeah, Hashem.
So Hashem spoke to
Everything's Hashem, everything's Hashem.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is divine. The Gemara brings it down. It's an halacha of Doraisa. Okay, so this thing, this is really what I wanted to talk about, although we're going to probably hit the erase button soon, that we have to get used to the idea. Anything that comes out of your mouth, you shall do. In other words, a person's words are very important. This is really what I wanted to talk about. How important our words are, because we find a very strange thing. First of all, we see that the destruction of the temple, to some extent, is blamed on Lashon Hara, blamed on words. And we even find an interesting Rashi towards the beginning of Schmooz, when Moshe Rabbeinu has this run-in with Dasan Vaviram, one of the many, the very first one, and he finds out that they've been telling Lashon Hara about him. He's the guy that killed the Mitzri the day before. And he said, what, you're going to kill us like you killed him? And he was very upset when he heard them saying Lashon Hara. But then he says something very strange, Moshe Rabbeinu. He says, Achein nodah hadavar. Now the matter is known. You ever say that to yourself? Now the matter is known. Very strange thing. Most of us wouldn't say it to ourselves, right? But Moshe Rabbeinu said it to himself. Why? Because he'd always been wondering, Rashi says. And you know what's been bothering him? For his whole life, it was bothered by this problem. Rashi says he was always wondering. And this is the question we have to ask ourselves before we start Rosh Chodesh Adar. Ma chatu Yisrael mikol shivim umos. What did the Jews do more than all the other 70 nations? Lihios nirdim, to be struck and whipped, bavodas perach, in the subjugation in Egypt. But that's what he was happy about now. Aval ro'ani, but now I see shehem ra'uyim l'chak, that now they are fitting for this punishment. Now we finally understand we are fitting for this punishment. Why? Because what it said before, Vayira Moshe, Da'ad lo al Sharab Yisrael Roshaim Del Turim. He saw now that there are people amongst the Jewish nation who are what's called Del Turim. People who go around saying evil things about other people. You see so-and-so? See the shirt he's wearing today? Right? Or anything that's derogatory, anything that can make someone feel bad, right? Or anything that could farshmut somebody. All of that is what Moshe Rabbeinu suddenly realized was causing the galus in Mitzrayim. And the galus in Mitzrayim was harsh. They were whipped, they were whatever, they were built into the walls. And now he finally understood. Because we don't realize the power of our speech. We don't think it's a big thing. That's the end of Bamidbar, says appreciate that what comes out of your mouth you should do. Not only what you say can have an effect on others, but you should realize how holy your words are. That's why the Chavos Chaim asks in a different place. It says that Lashon Hara is worse than the 3 cardinal sins. Worse than killing, avodah zorah, and illicit relations. The 3 major averas a person's supposed to give up his life for. But Lashon Hara is worse than that, it says in Chazal. Why? What's so bad about Lashon Hara? I said a few bad things about someone. That's like killing, that's like this. Assuming you didn't embarrass him in public. Right? What is... He said because the words that a person uses, where do they come from? Where do your words come from? Truly, where do your words come from? Where do words come from? Our neshama. They come from our neshama. It does not happen by other animals, right? They have animal language, but they don't have real language, right? The language we have comes from our neshama, from the Tzelem Elokim. The Shorish is a holy place. That's why it actually says in the Parsha, Lo Yachel Devaro. Don't not just besmirch your speech, don't make it unholy, profane. Don't take something that's holy and make it unholy, because that's what happens when you don't do what you say you're going to do. It's like this holy thing came out of your mouth, and then you say, it's not worth it. It's nothing. No, I'm not going to do it. Right? No, that you're profaning your speech. Speech is holy. How is speech holy? Speech is holy because it comes from a neshama inside of us that's the Tzelem Elokim. And therefore, it behooves us to take stock of that. And not only when we're speaking about people to realize we're saying holy words. You can use that holy word to besmirch a Jew. It's like taking a Kiddush cup and hitting someone over the head with your Kiddush cup. Who's going to make Kiddush with that cup anymore? Right? You take your Kiddush cup, bang someone over the head, and then sit there and make a Kiddush. Right? You wouldn't want to do that. So this is a time we should take stock of our words, of how our words are very holy things. And by the way, it says women got 9 portions of words, many more than men. So even though it's sometimes hard on a man to hear all those Tisha Kavim of words, all those portions of words. But we should realize that what she really was given was more kedusha, was more of an opportunity to say when you say words, realize they're holy. Something coming out of your mouth is holy. So therefore, obviously, you don't want to say lashon hara with those words. Therefore, you want to keep your word, right? You say he's good to his word. That's an important thing, right? I want to have a word with you. That's a holy thing, right? And it's not just an expression. These words are coming from our neshama, and that's why Hashem is so makpid with them. That's why it could cause a churban, and that's why it could cause a shibud mitzrayim. That's why it could put us in really hot water. So as we start Sefer Devarim, we should take this in mind, that this is a point we have to work on, that our words should not just be holy, they are holy. Realize that your words that you use from your mouth are holy. Use them in the right way. Just like if you had something that belonged to the Beis HaMikdash that was holy, you wouldn't misuse it. What happens if you misuse something that's holy? It's chas v'shalom l'never. You have to bring a korban on that. So this is a time to be mischazik in this, I believe, and that's where we find stories about the Gedolim. That sometimes, say, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky once told someone that he wasn't able to make it to their Seder for Pesach because he doesn't eat gebrachs. And really, he did eat gebrachs. But from that time onward, he never ate gebrachs again. Because he said, I don't eat gebrachs. I don't want that to be a lie. Right? And it's not just a game. We should take it seriously. Our words have holiness. And that's why, perhaps, it said one of the Gedolim said, I sat amongst the Gedolim all my life, and I found nothing greater than quietness. Right? Because you can hear what all the Gedolim say if you're quiet. But also, you're careful with what you say. You don't just say 1,000 words a minute, and who knows what was in those words. So, they say actually, by the way, the Chafetz Chaim was extremely talkative. His son-in-law was extremely quiet, they say. But he was talkative. Why? Because he knew all the halachas of lashon hara. He knew exactly what he could say and what he couldn't say. So then you could say as much as you want. But most of us are probably not even on the madrega of the son-in-law, so we should be a little bit more careful. But hopefully, Bezrat Hashem, increase our happiness till tonight. Then we have to start to minimize it a bit. Hopefully, if we do it the right way, maybe on Tisha B'Av we won't have to sit, we won't have to cry. Maybe we'll have already reason to be more besimcha. That it says Mashiach comes on Tisha B'Av somehow, and maybe we'll be zocheh b'ezrat Hashem. At least we should have the joy of knowing that we worked properly through this time of the year, and we brought the Geula one step closer. B'ezrat Hashem.
Amen.